he went into all the country around the Jordan, preaching a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. Come and receive this holy water for the redemption of your souls. Travel with a lighter step as your soul receives the Lord Jesus. Well, praise to the Lord.
Well, I tell you what, preacher, I found my redemption. The blues really is this to me. It's a relief for pressure. The pressure of my sins will be relieved. Yes, indeed, relieved. No matter what the road brings, the blues will be relief indeed.
What's a bossy girl like you doing in a space like this? About halfway up the island, I thought an espresso would be nice to set the old metabolism closer to where I would like it to be. The group could pee, stretch, and get some fresh air. My dog has the uncanny ability to remember everywhere she's been, especially if memories of squirrels are attached. Sheeby can be sound asleep in the backseat of my car. If I come within 50 feet of a place she is known, her familiar territory alarm goes off in her head, and she's up, alert, and ready to go. The women are like that. Passed out in the back seat, as soon as I get within 50 feet of stopping for anything, they slowly come to. I pulled into a combination antique store, gas station, and espresso stand, Lester's. The women were ready to see the espresso sign, a bathroom and a place to sit, smoke, and stretch out. I'd made a popular decision. Right now, they liked me. Opinions would change regarding my abilities as a leader on an hourly basis. Most of them would make me responsible for what was wrong in their lives, never for what was right.
Oh, honey, I've got to go to the bathroom. My eyes are floating.
Lucy was crawling over Chrissy's lap, trying to get out before everyone else. Chrissy was having no part of it.
Hey, watch it. Wait your fucking turn. We all have to go.
It was too late. Chrissy's words were hitting the back of Lucy's head. She had beat Chrissy out the door. Chrissy was on the next topic of importance.
I'm getting myself a bag of chips. You want anything?
It was depressing how much she could eat and not gain weight.
No thanks.
While the others took advantage of the pit stop, I sat down on top of the picnic table, ignoring the little attached benches. It seemed like too much trouble to get my legs in and under the table and out again. Too permanent. AC was headed my way. Just walking looked like work for her. We were only hours into the trip, and she was starting to feel it. This observation was an educated guess on my part. In true AC form, nothing was wrong. She felt fine. The day before, she had stood on her feet all day long serving greasy fried chicken and then sang at the trowel until 1:30 a.m. If you were in good shape, it would be a rough schedule to keep. When you are 150 pounds overweight and have diabetes, it would be devastating. Dark circles were etched under her eyes. AC's problems looked like they were weighing her down like wet clothing. I motioned for her to sit down, though I didn't have to. She would have done it anyway. AC does what she wants to do. AC had the look. It was a look you didn't usually see on her. A look of uncertainty lost on a self-sufficient face. How do I say this? I want to run something by you. I felt like I had entered some kind of warp zone with Chrissy and now AC. Was this a sign that the trip was going to be extra weird? Neither one of them had ever come to me before. To Paula, yes. To me, no. Yeah, AC, shoot. This was hard for her, and rare. Her confiding in me was an honor, and I knew it. Oh, dear. Well, let's see. This guy I met at the restaurant has been coming in, and he's been real friendly with me. I mean, real friendly with me. He's such a dear. It's been going on for a couple of months. We've had coffee twice. He's called once. I invited him down to my gig, keeping it real casual. Well, he showed up last night. She was fussing with the silver lining wrapped tightly around her Kit Kat, never looking at me when she talked. I knew it had been a long time for AC. She didn't talk about men. We had assumed there weren't many in her life. First, she always worked. Second, she was real bossy. Third, I believe she was scared to death of being hurt. I knew this guy was a big deal.
You must have been real excited. Glad to see him. It's good when they come to where you're performing. It gives you the home court advantage.
She listened with patient nervousness. She was more interested in what she was going to say next. The candy wrapper was hanging on for dear life. Well, oh dear. Well, he, had a woman with him. A date. Can you believe it? A date! There were tears in her eyes. Her hands were trembling. This was breaking my heart. It was so hard to see her in pain. I felt helpless. There must be something I can do besides just sitting here saying these trite little things to her. I saw her cry one other time. That's when she had almost lost her arm from diabetes. It scared the shit out of her. I wished she'd get the fucking wrapper off. I couldn't think of anything truly comforting to say.
Oh, AC, I'm sorry. That's fucked. What did you do?
She got quiet, her head sinking into her chest. And then she let out a deep sigh. Oh dear. Oh dear. Another deep sigh. Nothing. There was nothing I could do. Nothing I could do. The candy wrapper was starting to tear a little. AC was getting impatient. She'd been working on the wrapper for some time. This fucking thing? Who wraps these anyway? Why did things have to be so fucking hard for her? She worked her ass off, put up with a ghoulish father by eating too much and being bossy. Life was fucking unfair. She deserved to love someone. But I knew in my heart that life was nothing to do with what we deserve. If I got what I deserved, based on my previous behavior, I would be dead. At the moment, though, I wanted things to be different for AC. I didn't want what I knew to be true. I waited for a minute, wore it for a while. I tried to think of something profound to say.
AC, let me help you with that.
With what?
The candy.
I don't need any help. I'll get it myself. Fuck. Everything is so much harder than it should be.
AC, there's a wonderful man out there waiting. You'll meet him. It's a good thing to find out who people are right away before you get attached to them. In the meantime, we love you. It's not the same, but it's something. Are you supposed to be eating those?
AC was still fighting back the tears. It's carbs. I can eat carbs.
That sure is going to taste good when you get it open.
Yeah, they always do. They always do. Her shaking hands seemed almost out of control. Then she did something she had never done before. AC hugged me. I could sense her awkwardness. I felt it too. It was awkward for her to hug me and for me to return it. Our relationship was usually more about power than affection. She wanted to have her own band and be in control of her own career. It bothered her more than anyone else to be led by me. It was always a wedge between us. Still, her hug felt great, if hard-won. I felt close to her and grateful for the moment. It ended quickly. AC got up and walked towards her van. The Kit Kat had been swallowed almost whole while an intimate moment had passed. Who were these walking dead I chose to live with? Thoughts entered my mind of Northwest zombies inhabiting the Emerald City, shuffling their feet, moving slowly from place to place. We all piled back into the vans and headed towards Port Townsend, only an hour away. The conversations with AC and Chrissy stayed with me for the rest of the day. They always seemed so tough and in control, seemed beyond the tears all of us could shed so easily. Seeing AC have a human moment made me care even more for her. I couldn't wrestle away from the depth of her pain. It bothered me to see her hurting so much. Maybe selfishly, it reminded me of all the times I had been hurt. I would be glad to get on stage and shake it off there. Singing made most things better, especially pain.
When the great storm came to Tupelo, Mississippi, y'all remember that? The folks was dancing and raising sand in some of the great big barrel house tavern. some of them blues people were playing and didn't hear that God was working, raising up a storm. Then that tornado hit the jute, and I was laying in my room that night and listening to the rain and wind on the glass, and I realized that Tupelo was a town where they had done some mighty sinning. That tornado was like a ball of fire turning over and over till you couldn't hear nothing but it lumbering and roaring, and it tore Tupelo all to pieces. Only 8 people were saved, 'cause folks forgot there was a God.
Oh, all I remember is that when you played fast music, that was ragtime. And when we got Barrel House, we got blues. Out in Alabama, they need to sing rag. It's all in the bag. We got the blues in Tupelo. We're in the Barrel House now. Then they come out on it with their low-down dances. That's one of the things I remember. But I don't think the good Lord gonna kill people for some good old low-down dancing to the blues. That's not how I see it. No, sir.
We had left Lenny's house at 11 a.m. 4 p.m. was when we pulled into Port Townsend 5 hours later. It was a 2-hour trip at most. Between stopping for the hair of the dog, eating breakfast, ferries, arguing, taking a wrong turn, bathroom stops, and smoke breaks, it took 3 hours longer than usual. What else was new? We drove to the club first, 1 block up from the main street, and loaded the gear in. There was time to have a couple of drinks to decompress. Despite the roundabout trip, we arrived early for the gig, which was dangerous for Chrissy, Lucy, Vinny, and me. Getting to a gig early meant we could get into trouble. Lenny also took advantage of the timing and drank, but as usual, he would remain cool. He had that prison thing going on. We were downtown at the Uptown Bar and Grill. As the boys brought in the heavy stuff, the women brought in the microphone boxes, mic stands, and cord bags. Truth were told, we could lift more than the men. We just didn't want to. We had trained them over the years, had them believing it wasn't appropriate for us to do the heavy work. Even so, Chrissy and Lucy always complained about the little bit they had to pitch in. Lucy had just dropped a mic stand and was pitching a fit.
Oh, shit, I chipped a nail. Listen, honey, I'm not moving any more gear. The guys can do this. We're not supposed to.
I had to set her straight. Jesus, Lucy, it's one of the things that keeps the band happy. If we just pitch in a bit, they don't feel so used, so it's fair that we help them. They shouldn't do it all themselves, you know, because the band doesn't get paid extra for moving this shit. Paula was standing behind me and ready to back me up.
Come on, girlfriend, let's get busy. It's the only thing Lena asked you to do.
Lucy wasn't listening anymore. Her nail was getting her full attention. She was rummaging in her purse for something.
Now, honey, I know I have my special nail glue in here somewhere.
Lucy had special everything. I wasn't the only one to have made this observation. So had AC. Oh, Lucy, you are such a broad. What's with the special? You have special lipstick, special brushes, special tanning lotion, and special polish remover. What makes it all so special? Lucy rarely made direct eye contact. She saved it for those times when she had an important message to deliver, or if she was picking up some sweet young thing. This would be one of those times. You have to realize, while we all took makeup and toiletries seriously, it was more than serious to Lucy. It was religion. Makeup was a connection to her God. She answered in a reverent tone.
Honey, my things are expensive and hard to get, so I take good care of them. It's important we always look the best we can, honey. You girls should never forget that.
Lighten up, Lucy. AC was not impressed. She just wanted to hurry up and get to her room, away from the rest of us. In the meantime, I was trying to be invisible. I hadn't even taken a shower. I felt like a slob and tried to stand as far away from Lucy as I could without leaving the room. Lucy was the only one of the 6 of us who didn't ever sport a baseball cap or a ponytail to hide a bad hair day, or run around without makeup or in cut-off jeans. We continued to move the gear. Chrissy took Lucy over to the bar and comforted her while ordering a burger. All of a sudden, Chrissy was present for Lucy 100%. It wasn't that she was so concerned about Lucy's nail.
Chrissy would use any reason not to lift or carry anything beyond her purse. While Lucy and Chrissy were living out their mini-drama, those of us working blues slaves were scoping out the space. As usual, the stage was too small, bad for entertaining. Positioned on the short end of the room, bad for acoustics. Facing the bar, bad for volume. We could already hear the waitresses and bartenders telling us to turn down all night because they couldn't hear their drink orders. Well, so much for these mental notes. There was nothing we could do about it. We'd all had enough touring experience to expect these problems. We knew the music was an afterthought in most bars we played. At least the bar had personality. It was old. Hanging from the ceiling and on the walls were buggies, saws, anchors, and whatever else that can wash up on shore in a port town. The staff were small town, tourist friendly. As soon as we hit the door, the help was being helpful. Free food and free drinks. They gave us a hand setting up. We forgot about what was wrong and focused on what was right. The show had been sold out, which was typical. Who doesn't want to see 6 sexy, body, talented wild women on stage at one time? We sat in the bar that afternoon and drank, complained, reminisced about our road-weary joints, and relaxed. Though I was having trouble paying attention for most of it, I couldn't take my eyes off of the bartender. What was making my new potential victim more interesting is that he was giving me his big, beautiful smile every time I looked over. I eventually stopped looking away when his eyes caught mine. It was too much fun being an open flirt. Besides, I had had a few drinks, so shyness was no longer a problem. Yes, I definitely wanted to know the bartender a little better. He didn't look like a bartender, but more like a scientist or a math teacher in his early 40s. He had an intelligent and kind face. His hair was mostly gray, though there was still some dark brown left, hanging on to youth as best it could. He looked Jewish, aristocratic. His eyes were soft, sad, brown almonds. Almond-shaped eyes looking out from behind wire-rimmed glasses. Bo spoke quietly as if he thought what he said didn't matter much. I wonder how he could be heard in a noisy bar. He paid attention to what you said and gave it some thought after you said it. Not many people look at you when you talk to them. He studied you, watched your lips move. Bo was smart. Smarter than the men I'd been dating, though admittedly, my prerequisites of late were at substandard levels. I was dating my way down the food chain. Though I hadn't hit the bottom yet, I still hadn't gone out with a rock and roll bass player. The guidelines I had set for the men I was dating were simple. Could they read TV Guide? Did they have a driver's license? Actually, both were optional. The man I was then seeing was a welder and couldn't read. I'm not complaining. The man before him was a cab driver and an alcoholic, but he had a license. My social life was improving. Still, my dating life needed some whiskey with my soda. Bo seemed special, a classier cut above the other men. I wanted to impress him. That meant I had to keep my drinking to a minimum. I had plans for Bo. Sports sex was at the top of the list, and it seemed like he would be game. He asked me all the right questions.
So, are you married?
Oh, a long time ago. I answered him in my most feminine voice with a hint of victim thrown in. He pursued.
So then you're single?
Yes, I am. I'm just too busy to be hitched up to someone permanently. This, of course, was a lie. When it came to a man that I liked, I had nothing but time. I was getting uncomfortable. Bo kept looking at me with those damn soft brown eyes. I wanted to keep talking to him, but at the same time, I wanted to take the heat off me. I could feel my face growing red. Let's join the band. Do you have time for a beer? He continued to look at me.
So then we're done talking here?
Jesus, why did he have to be so fucking direct? No, I just thought it would be nice to sit down. I'm tired. I've been in a van for hours. Whew, that was close. He couldn't argue with that.
Sure, Lena. I'd love to.
We went over to the table and sat with the others. Bo bought a drink for everyone. That impressed the gang, since musicians are notorious cheaps. Bo was sitting next to me, and every time I looked over, he was looking back with a smile.
How long have you been singing, Lena?
I hated this question. It made me feel so old.
I don't know, about 20 years.
He mulled over this piece of information for a while.
I bet most of that time has been quite a struggle for you.
Jesus, I couldn't believe it. Nobody ever said that. They said things like, "Oh, I bet it's really fun. I've always wanted to be a singer. Do you just sing? What else do you do?"
Yeah, it's been hard. But singing's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. Somehow it seems worth it. The whole thing evens out in the end.
He thoughtfully nodded his head and smiled.
I know what you mean.
We left our private little bubble and joined in with the group. Bo fit in with the conversation the band was having, which was no small task. We had our own language, our own special catchwords. The humor was based on our combined personal and musical history. The horror of the morning was subsiding. Bo sitting next to Sam and I, while the group was getting to know each other again, gave me a warm feeling inside. The rhythm was coming. I was letting go of how it should be and plugged into what it was. Bo and Sam were hitting it off. That was good because Sam was one of my favorite people. After 25 years in the business, I've found that it's usually the drummer who makes me laugh, and Sam was no exception. Besides being my favorite, he did the best impression of Pee Wee Herman I'd ever seen or heard. He was short, slender, and had the personality of a munchkin. Drummer Boy had a "Hey you guys, come on, why is everyone so serious? Live life with a joke at the end of our lips" attitude. There wasn't a paranoid bone in this guy's body. I remember one night we had run out of beer. We were all too high to go get more. It was 6 a.m. The thought of making a trip to 7-Eleven couldn't have been scarier. Usually at 6 a.m, I was looking around for the tin foil to cover the windows. The thought of sunlight made me feel like a vampire. My ancestors are from Transylvania, so vampires were more real to me than to most people, but not to Sam. Sam said in his squeaky Pee-wee impersonation,
I'll go get some beer. How about some burritos?
No, Sam. I don't think I could eat anything just right now.
I said this as I unhinged my jaw from too much cocaine.
Rightio, I'm off.
Sam was off in a flash. 2 hours later, we got a call from Sam.
Hey, you guys. Sorry I didn't make it back.
I yelled into the phone.
Sam, where are you? We are thirsty.
He laughed.
I'm taking a tour at the brewery. You should see how much beer they have in here. Free samples everywhere.
Whatever happened in his elf-like head between Lenny's house and the 7-Eleven, no one knows. But it must have been something profound because the brewery was 10 miles south from where we were. You couldn't be mad at the guy. Hell, it was time for bed anyway. The squeeze on my hand from Bo brought me back, and I wondered if I should tell him this story. Maybe not. Telling him I stayed up all night on whiskey and cocaine with strong urges to foil the windows wasn't such a good idea. I decided to wait until I knew him better. Bo pulled me over to the side. God, he smelled good, musty and sweet.
You want to hang out for a little while tomorrow?
I did my best not to sound excited. I really liked him.
Sure. How about one tomorrow afternoon? I need to get some sleep.
We exchanged information. Though thrilled, I was feeling a little dishonest. I hadn't quite broken up with the man I was seeing in Seattle. Like a cigarette, I had left smoldering in the ashtray as I lit another one. It was getting late. There were 2 hours left before the show. Just enough time to haul our asses off to the motel, get clean, and sober up. So I tore myself away from Bo and checked around for the band. I focused on Vinny. While I was kicking Bo's tires, imagining what it would be like to be married to him, Vinny had had a lot to drink. He wasn't doing well. I could tell by his sneering.
Vinny, we better get going to the motel. You need to straighten up a bit.
I knew he would fight me on that one.
I'm fine. I'll do my fucking job.
My voice got a little firmer.
Come on, Vinny. You'll thank me for it later. Let's go back and shower and get cleaned up.
What I said to Vinny usually didn't register. This time it did. I reluctantly said goodbye to Beau, confirmed our plans for the next day, and headed towards the motel. It was time to transform. The people who hired us must have been shocked when we pulled in off the road. We looked like hell, nothing at all like the promotional pictures. When we returned for the set, we'd come back looking great. Sequined, sparkled, perfumed, buffed, high-heeled, curled, and focused. This time, I got a room to myself. I was off to a good start. The privacy was wonderful. I needed a shower bad. I had to look good because Beau would be there. Oh yeah, and a sellout crowd. I have a particular system of unpacking. Everything has to be in its place before I can get dressed. Heat rollers, cosmetics, and jewelry all have to be lined up around the bathroom sink, which never seems to be located in the bathroom, but in a separate alcove next to where the clothes hang. Ashtray and lighter placed strategically on the nightstand. Clothes must be hung up with t-shirts, sweaters, and jeans on the silver wire rack above the hanging clothes. Underwear is put away in a drawer. Booze and food go on the shiny imitation wood table. Shoes and cowboy boots are placed side by side in a neat row below the clothes. Scarves are hung over the lamps or draped on corners of the mirrors. Toiletries are put on the bathtub rim and tank of the toilet with incense and candles lit. There. Home. At last I can get ready. The rhythm is in the room. I pulled out the big guns. Black lace skirt, black tunic chiffon blouse, black lace stockings, and cowboy boots. You could see through everything except for the boots. I was taking a hostage, and that equaled extreme measures, which meant heat rollers. Dealing with my hair took energy and time. Each hair just knew it was not supposed to be twisted around a heat roller. I had declared war. When finished, I looked in the mirror. Much better. Yes, this was more like it. It was getting close to showtime, and I was starting to get the jitters, but I knew what to do with my pre-show nerves. I played tricks on myself and transformed the energy. The first thing I did was feel it, see where I felt unsettled. Next, I had to find where it lived in my body. Stomach, hands, mouth dry, voice shaking. Feel it. Don't fight it. Don't try and not be nervous. But I knew I was, so I needed to remind myself my job was to turn it into something juicy. What did I need to do out there? What would be a good action? I concentrated on my breathing as if I had nothing else to do. I had to remember the message, the music, was more compelling than I was. I got a delivery to make. I had to give my mind something interesting to think about and remember whatever I was trying to do was exactly what wouldn't happen. Law of physics. The harder you push, the more resistance you get. We rendezvoused in the lobby of the Tides Motel. Scenes from An Officer and a Gentleman were filmed here. Puget Sound's boat-lined shore fell away, on the other side of the window just below our balcony. With the water crashing outside the windows and the blue on the lobby walls, I felt like a fish in an aquarium. The carpeting, front desk, and furniture were all blue. I felt almost compelled to do the breaststroke as we were leaving. At the same time, I was thinking how romantic it all was, how perfect for the big plans I had with Beau the bartender. We were ready. It was showtime.
I'll tell you what, Ma Rainey. There was a time our Lord saw fit to send the little boll weevil to take out home. The farmer would go out in the morning and the boll weevil would be there. Come back in the evening and the boll weevil had moved his whole family there. The farmer go to the boll weevil and ask, "What make your head so red?" The boll weevil answer, "Eating all the farmer's cotton, but he's trying to kill me dead." The Lord knows that at times the only way we can humble ourselves to ask for his help is through disaster. That red-headed boll weevil is disaster itself. We supposed to be praying, not singing.
Oh, Lord, don't say anything about Ma. All my gold hanging around myself tight. Ain't nobody in the world ever yet been able to holler, hey, Bo Weevil, like me. Not like me. Nobody. I heard them try to, but they can't do it. Hey, Bo Weevil. All right, 'cause Bo Weevil, he was eating up everything down south. That worm would eat up all the food and everything. And it was time to holler, hey, Bo Weevil, you been gone a great long time. I was clever, and I don't think the Lord mind none. You see, it was all in fun.
Something was bothering me. Couldn't figure out what it was. I looked around. The club was packed. Color Us ready to go. We were down to do 2 90-minute shows. Each girl had 3 songs per set. We would alternate. I went first, then Paula, Chrissy, Nina, Lucy, and finally AC. Like baseball, we had our lineup. The band we opened for was The Opposition, a jazz trio who was just a little light for the rowdies in the bar and for the 6 wild babes following. They looked nervous, which made us feel a little cockier. We always started with the same girl and followed our designated order. Pulling out the remote microphone allowed us to spend time everywhere but on stage. This way, we could get into their faces, their laps, and on the bar. Whatever it took to be the victors, our aim was to make our act impossible to follow. I was the first one up. It was my job to warm up the crowd and let them know what was in store. I grabbed the remote and went to the back of the room and went forehead to forehead with the woman in the audience. I pulled her up out of her chair and we danced while I was singing the hook over and over, Ain't Gonna Cry No More. I wondered if Bo could see me, and if he could, was he paying close attention? The song had a message. Don't fuck with me, buddy. I was really putting on this show for him. Everyone's heads were turned away from the stage so they could see me. I wanted them to think, if this is the opening number, where can they go from here? Meanwhile, Paula was warming up in the bullpen, thinking, they ain't seen nothing yet, girlfriend. While I was doing my thing, the other women were singing and dancing, physically supporting my song, but mentally each one was waiting her turn to cause more damage. As my song was ending and Paula's was beginning, I handed the microphone to Paula. She kicked her leg above her head, stuck her tongue all the way out, then licked the mic and shouted,
We are not good girls.
Paula began to shimmy. Her little basketball ass was going faster than the eye could see. The shimmy moved up and down her body while she screamed, standing on shaky ground. The audience was up on their feet. 2 women down and 4 to go. It was Chrissy's turn. Her time to show the people what it's like to sing higher, lower, and louder than anyone they'd ever heard before. If that wasn't enough, huge sounds were coming out of a tiny little blonde in 4-inch high heels. Chrissy started without the music. She counted 1, 2, 3, 4. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Then the music jumped on in. It flattened me every time I heard her do it. So for the virgin audience, the introduction was paralyzing. Chrissy's tiny size and big voice made what you heard seem a bit unreal. How could that gigantic sound come out of something so small? The crowd was screaming. We were definitely warmed up. Time to give some comic relief. Nina moved into the late-night adult portion of the women's show. She sang about her grocery man and what nice vegetables he had, how she had to fill her shopping cart up with the zucchini and needed to come back for more. But her job was not only to make them laugh, but make them cry as she moved into the second part of her medley. While we were performing, Nina was paying serious attention to the sound man. I was so busy running the show and flirting with Bo that it took me a while to see what Nina was up to. Nina missed her cue. She didn't have the last section of her song ready. I interrupted her sexual fantasies with a loud reminder. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Miss Nina Myers. She heard that. Nina's face turned red and she quickly regrouped. She sang, That's What My Man Is For, a powerful ballad which had a little blues, gospel, and R&B thrown in. As soon as she starts singing, I forgave the mistake. How could I stay angry when listening to her beautiful round tones, so rich they could soothe the wild beast? But the women wouldn't forget her screw-up for a couple of days. This is ammunition we all waited for and loved having so we could hassle each other. It was all in fun, but still I'm sure Nina dreaded it like I did whenever it was my turn to be razzed. Nina's routine was consistent. When she showed up for a gig, just take your pick. Nervous, afraid, insecure, complaining, menopausal, cramped, and tired. The show would start, and Nina would slowly come to life, forgetting the problems that were so important only moments before. Singing was Nina's band-aid for a very unhappy life. Like the birds on my backyard feeder, at least she was predictable. While Nina worked her song and the sound guy, the music had a relaxed, beautiful sound like wet grass. The notes were rich, soft, round, and luxurious. Tones that are warm enough and sweet enough for you to sink your teeth into like cotton candy. The phrasing was just plain lazy, like it was too much trouble to hit the notes on time, which made it all sound more natural, more relaxed. When I heard her sing, the experience reminded me of the little train traveling through the amusement park. Go ahead and just sit back and relax. We'll do the driving. Not too fast, because we're going to be winding in and out, nice and easy through the scary rides and crowds of people. Ah, now that's singing. She continued to sing, and with that, I let myself have some compassion for her. Recalling that on one of our good days, Nina and I were having coffee when she talked a bit about her dad, the only time she ever said anything about him to me. Whenever Nina couldn't do something right or made a mistake in her father's eyes, he would pick up something and throw it at her. If she were in reach of him, he would bash her head against the wall. She had some hearing loss from the constant head beatings her father inflicted upon her. Realizing that head beatings might give someone a good shot at having the twitters, maybe I'm being less than understanding. Finishing her song, Nina looked over at me, shooting one of her wicked looks. I would have to try for understanding some other time. Nina was just finishing up her song. While the crowd wiped away their tears, Lucy had been warming up. She was ready to go. Her body had so many curves, there wasn't enough room for them all. Lucy had grown up with music, and now she was going to show us just what she had been learning all that time. Her dress clung to her tighter than a batter's grip at the bottom of an inning with a full count. The audience was ogling, and she just knew it was her job to drive them crazy. Lucy oozed over the microphone.
Honey, I feel so good tonight, and I know you're all going to make me feel better.
When Lucy got done with them, each member of the audience was going to need help to wipe the drool off their chins. As they wiped, AC was biting at the bit. It was her turn. The sweat was glistening on her arms. She had been warming up all right. No light touch here. She was going to put it out to the back row with her first note. AC always worked hard for the crowd. She sang from the bottom of her feet. It was an amazing process to watch. She would pull up from the floor, grabbing some invisible string that gave her strength. Then it would travel through her body while it shivered and stomped and exploded out of her mouth that was wide open, just waiting to receive the sound. Her range equaled Chrissy's, and like her, AC, no matter what the circumstances, could sing night after night after night. I would watch her perform and forget to breathe. It made no difference to AC, though, since she was the type of entertainer that has a big black hole inside of them that can never be filled, never be touched by anything human. But applause for them is the quick fix. It works in the beginning, but because it is a quick fix, and because it is coming from something human, and because it is based in those fears we all have, fear of being lonely and fear of not being good enough, it doesn't last. AC's hole was just a little deeper. If you've got that complex, you find out the applause doesn't last long. Yes, there is relief while you're on stage, but you can't sing every hour of the day. You're living for the next gig. You become an applause freak. It's a rotten way to exist. There you are, wandering around aimlessly, continuously looking for something to affirm your very ordinary behavior. If you cook a good dinner for someone, you need applause. You go grocery shopping for the meal. How about some applause? It goes on and on. Maybe having been so close to dying, maybe looking straight into the conceited face of vanity with all that extra weight. Just one of these would have had a profound effect on her. There were many sides to AC, and I never knew which one I was going to deal with. I grew tired of the emotional gymnastics of being her friend and found a more comfortable spot in just being one of her peers. Friendship with her wasn't much different than on the amusement ride of the salt and pepper shaker. There you sat on the chair inside the cage, going around head over feet, and at the same time, the cage itself is spinning left to right. You quickly become confused about which way is up. I grew tired of the dizziness, confusion, and bruised feelings, and retreated into being a detached admirer. I was a little jealous as she continually packed rooms with her own group as I struggled to find my audience. There were many nights where fans of hers would ask me where she was playing. How the hell do I know? I'd yell this over my shoulder as I was lugging in my own equipment through an empty bar with no customers. They were probably all down the street gazing at AC with adoration. For years after, we would be on the road and blow off steam by pointing to any building that struck our fancy: gas stations, barns, restaurants, bars, chicken coops, open fields, and say, AC played there last week. She sold it out. Though we'd poke fun, I knew AC deserved to sell the room out. After all, she only knew one way, and it was all the way. All the way was what I was reminded of as I watched Chrissy entertaining the Port Townsend audience. It was her turn to sing again, and she was standing on the bar, pointing her finger at some guy singing, "I'm here for you, baby." With remote mic in hand, standing on the bar, she was now headed for the men's bathroom. The women had done what we were sent out to do, to help the group hit heights that most audiences would never see. At this point, we were exhausted. We had been dancing on stage for practically 80 minutes. We still had another singer to go. I was getting tired and beginning to slow down a little on the dancing. Paula wouldn't allow slouching for very long. She danced over to me and leaned in. I knew she was going to scream what she always screamed when I started to poop out.
Let's get busy.
Jesus, doesn't she realize I have a fucking hangover? I should be sleeping somewhere, not kicking my feet above my pounding head. The crowd was beside themselves. They hadn't counted on an all-star show when they bought their ticket. AC's turn again, and I always made sure she was last. Her voice and presence were huge and commanding. The gospel she carried with her put the show into another dimension. Everyone in the audience was now climbing into the spiritual elevator, leaving the third dimension and entering the fourth. Fourth floor, prayer books, pulpits, holy water, and stained glass windows. Don't forget to genuflect before you get off. We were tapping into an ancient memory in their gut that they had forgotten about until they heard the gospel. AC was in charge now. This was her arena, which gave her permission to be in charge of the song and the band and the audience and us and the bar and the microphone and she was in her element. AC was perfect for the end of the first show. She was singing a gospel rendition of Piece of My Heart. As the people were dancing on tables and chairs, singing the chorus, I was trying to find my second wind. We had another 90-minute show in a half hour. Entertaining sure did get in the way of drinking. AC had the bar singing along. The jazz act following us looked nervous. I knew we had won the game. Hell, we had won our division. They put up their hands, but we shot them anyway. We took our bow. No sooner did we get off stage when Lucy, who was bummed she hadn't seen the sound guy first, had a motive to tease Nina. After all, the sound man had a baby face and was just Lucy's type.
Hey, honey, where were you when the music started?
Nina was horrified if she didn't do things right. Her face was deep red. I knew enough to leave her alone. I'm sure she was waiting for a beating, like the men in her life had previously given her. Nina was trying to ignore Lucy, pretending she didn't hear. Lucy took note and switched her ribbing to a new topic.
I tell you what, honey, you're real lucky I didn't see Mr. Cute Sound Boy. Honey, if I had seen him first, you wouldn't have had a chance.
I changed the subject to her new distraction. She thought the sound guy was cute. To me, he looked like a young hippie from the 60s. He had long brown hair parted in the middle. You could tell he loved his long hair because he played with it continuously, flipping it back behind his shoulders, tucking it behind his ears, braiding it into a loose ponytail. His name was Andrew. His features were small, eyes sunken in a little face that kept a delicate nose and thin mouth. Andrew was tall and this side of skinny. He wasn't my type, but he sure was Nina's. She got laid all 3 nights. Bo was mesmerized by my performance. I could tell by the way he looked at me. It was a look of admiration. Never before had I seen that look when a man was staring at me. I've seen that look in a man's eye, however, when he was gazing at a cherried-out Harley or when the new TV guide arrived for the month. It felt good to be the recipient of his admiration. Marty was standing next to me, oblivious to anything except the guitar he had bought 2 days ago. There was that look. Bo wanted to firm up our plans for the next day. I was trying to stay cool, to keep my distance. I was sweating like a pig. The sweat was half from performing and half from being nervous. Along with Marty, he didn't seem to notice. Bo had a plan.
Let's take a drive tomorrow and see Discovery Bay. We can eat clams on the water.
As Bo was talking to me, I thought of all the men who had crossed my doomed path of relationships. I couldn't think of one man that had bothered to make plans, even for something as simple as a date. I was beginning to see the reason I was so nervous. My heart knew Bo was the real thing. He was acting like a mature man is supposed to. Was I ready for that? Did I deserve it? Was this the nagging feeling I had earlier? I couldn't shake it. Maybe once he got to know me, wouldn't he see all the things that were wrong with me and then fly the coop? They always flew the coop. Well, maybe I kicked them out of their netted prison. Damn, I was really scared. Why wouldn't I be? In my mind, I had already married him, had children, gotten divorced, and we hadn't even gone out on our first date. Bo was oblivious to my private nightmare.
So does the plan sound good to you?
I was coming out of my fog. Oh, what's that, Bo?
Lena, you're not even listening. I said, how about some clams on the water tomorrow?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm always distracted when at work. Sure, sounds wonderful. I can't wait. See you around 1 o'clock. Right then, Marty, guitar player, alias punster, jokester extraordinaire, interrupted.
Hey, Lena, your husband called and said, don't forget to pick up the Pampers on the way home.
Bo laughed nervously. He was pretty sure Marty was kidding. Marty, it would be impossible for you to get any sleep the way you have to sit up all fucking night and think up your useless material. Marty smiled, his big hair sitting on top of a 6'3" lean frame. He didn't care what the reaction was to his stupid gags. The thrill was in getting to use them.
Yep, it's worth every lost minute of sleep.
Dragging his huge feet, we imagined the rest, Chrissy slept with him but wasn't talking. With hands to match, he walked away with his blues country swagger. But the boy loved puns and jokes. He drove us crazy with those puns. It got to the point where you were afraid to say anything about anything because you knew he'd leap. A joking pun leopard. Bo and I said goodnight. Tomorrow seemed like a long way off. The bar was a mess. It had been so crowded the poor waitresses couldn't get through to serve drinks, let alone clear the tables. Empty and half-filled glasses covered the tops of the tables. Chairs were turned over and spilled beer was on the floor, along with a few leftover drunks who were sure that last call didn't apply to them. Chrissy and Lucy were back at the bar. You could hear them cackling a block away. It was nice to see Lucy was getting over her broken nail. Nina had disappeared with Andrew. Lenny was flirting with some drunken customer. Paula had gotten a ride back to the motel like the good girl she was.
AC was talking to the club owner. She was always working the situation, making sure the people that mattered knew exactly who she was. There was no way she was getting lost in the sea of women she was traveling with. Marty was talking to some guitar player who was playing down the street and showing him his latest guitar acquisition, a '67 Paisley Fender. Vinny and Sam were sitting at a table unwinding with their complimentary drinks. It was the end of the night and the beginning of the tour. Even though the scenario at the moment was typical, I could feel there were higher stakes. I didn't know what. I just knew there was. AC confiding in me, Chrissy talking about Bick, and meeting Bo were definitely signs that this trip was going to be different. I came to at noon. Thank God I didn't have to get up and pack. We were staying 2 more days. Bo was showing up at 1. I had an hour to get ready, even though I'm not human until 4. But hell, I was a pretty good actress. I could act like I was awake and knew the English language. I could deal with coffee later. I needed to look good, but casual. Ice cubes on my face always worked to get the blood moving. It was a beauty tip I picked up from the film Mommy Dearest, along with no more wire hangers. There was an ice machine on our floor. This would be smoother than I first thought. I poured the bucket of ice in the sink. Then, scooping it up to my puffy face, I began to look awake and a bit healthier. Add some makeup and I was ready to go. Bo was right on time. I love that. If I have to wait for someone, my mood gets very dark. I'm still sorting that one out. Bo pulled up in a 1965 gray Volvo. It suited his looks, and he looked wonderful. Mr. Northwest, dressed immaculately in forest green Bermudas, perfectly white tennis shoes, whiter socks, and even whiter t-shirt. He looked healthy. When I saw how good Bo looked, I hoped I had used enough ice. Did the eye drops clear up my eyes enough? My clothes seemed inappropriate. Blue jeans and a black t-shirt with the women's blues catchphrase, "We are not good girls," blazoned across the front. It didn't quite match up to the Ivy League look of my date. I was feeling insecure, something like a gassy liquid trying to take shape of a container called Bo. The drive was beautiful. Rolling mounds covered with dense green trees, vines, and shrubs. An occasional deer nibbled on the long grass off to the side of the road. Discovery Bay was edged in a darker shade of green. The water was the kind of blue you could see through. I found the scenery almost overwhelming. The conversation was challenging. Bo had many interests. Most of the time I had to pretend I had some knowledge about whom or what he was talking about. "What do you do with your spare time, Bo?" His voice was quiet as he answered a bit studiously.
Oh, I read about fractal geometry and quantum physics. I'm interested in anything by Stephen Hawking or Richard Feynman.
This was not the kind of answer I was used to getting. I was ready for something like watch football. Jesus, not only was I dressed inappropriately, but he was going to find out how academically stupid I was. Maybe if I jumped out of the car now, later to be scraped off the asphalt as roadkill, I could save myself from an afternoon of embarrassment. Bo spoke when spoken to. When you asked him a question, he did not elaborate. I wasn't worried about that. I could talk enough for any 10 people, as long as it wasn't about anything really important. I have often thought how convenient it would be if I had 2 mouths. I could sing and complain at the same time. We pulled into a lovely place. It was all windows, like many other restaurants that sit on the water. The booths and tabletops were royal blue in an attempt to imitate the feel of the water outside the bay windows. I felt intimidated by all the sunlight streaming in, making me acutely aware that it spotlighted my many imperfections. Why did I agree to this? I should have insisted on a booth in a dark corner. But there were no booths in dark corners. This was a place for people who had nothing to hide, like the size of their pores. I hate first dates. It's like I've taken some drug that makes me hypersensitive to every movement I make. How I get out of the car, how I try and slide in the booth but get a little stuck. Have I made enough eye contact? If I look at him too long, will he think I'm flirting too much? Am I discreet enough when putting on my lipstick? Is there too much food on my fork? Because I like Bo so much, my feelings for him were just making all my insecurities worse. The waitress brought the menus. We didn't order right away, and we didn't talk, but sat quietly for a long time, looking out over the water. The view was exquisite and romantic. The waves seemed to pair off in twos as they rolled in towards the shore. Finally, the talking alarm in my head went off. The silence that was working for me just minutes ago was now causing me to feel uneasy. So, time to continue the conversation. Tell me something about your past, Bo. I knew he must have had an interesting history. He was quiet again while organizing his thoughts. Another behavior I had never considered thinking before talking.
I studied medicine at the University of Washington, neurobiology. I ended up on a research team at the School of Medicine, but I got tired of the politics and quit. I wanted to do research, and what that meant for me was putting together grants and kissing a lot of ass. I just don't have the mindset really for either one. I left and joined up with the Special Forces.
I was disappointed. You mean you were a Green Beret? Bo, unaware of my disapproval, continued.
I wanted to use my medical training.
Seeing this new side of Bo really threw me off balance. I'm an ex-peace marcher. The 60s were a big deal to me. You could find me at sit-ins, peace marches, the moratoriums in Washington, D.C. I was passionate about my beliefs. To think that Bo chose to go into the service of his own free will troubled me. I began to reorganize my thoughts so I could make an exception for Bo, find a way to see it from his point of view. Did you go to Vietnam? I was secretly hoping he didn't.
No, I joined the service in the 70s.
I was relieved. Nobody I knew who had fought in Vietnam returned without severe baggage. His gentle brown eyes grew sadder. He wasn't going to tell me everything. His heart was peeking out from under his sleeve. Bo wasn't like most men I'd run into, which was good news. I wanted to know more about him, let him know he could trust me and that I was a good listener if he needed me to be. I studied his face. This was a face I could look at for a long time. Bo's persona was like a pool of water. Whatever I said fell into him without a splash, then slowly sank to the bottom. I wished I could be more like him, so non-judgmental. Every piece of information that came my way, I made sure to attach one of my opinions to it. Bo was a pool of water, and I was the rock that skipped along on top. We had lunch, ate clams. As I was prying one apart, leaving no clamshell unturned, Bo grabbed my hand. He looked into my eyes, his gaze steady and sure. His lips moved painfully slow.
You are so beautiful.
I could hear a creaking sound. It was my scared, tired heart opening. He squeezed my hand a little harder. We were falling in love. All at once, I had become a living, breathing cliché. My heart was pounding, and the sweat on my hands made the glass I was holding slippery. I couldn't think of the words he was waiting for. All of a sudden, direct eye contact was impossible. Every breath was short and difficult to catch. I was in the 3rd grade. I wondered if I should mention the stolen bike. Love at first sight had just been an expression until that very moment. The only thing I could do was smile at him nervously. I swallowed the bites of clams in between my stilted breathing. Time to put the other cigarette out.